Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning, and thanks for tuning in to Tailosive Tech live on YouTube. We're kicking off today's live stream with kind of a big message we got, but an interesting one nonetheless. Also by one of our favorites, at least my personal favorite supporters, because he was one of the insane and rare now Tailosive Tech Ultra members. So I feel inclined to answer him first, but of course we'll talk about all kinds of things. This is just what we're kicking off today's live stream with. But get comfy, get your popcorn ready, because this is a big subject, and one that was such a big question that I almost considered making a video about it. Then I realized, nope, you know what? This video would be too long, and I would rather have this conversation publicly in real time with you guys, because I want to get your thoughts on this subject as well. But yes, it's about Apple's leak culture. This absolutely affects my channel, our day-to-day, because a lot of what we talk about on this channel is what is yet to come. What are we waiting for? What's coming next? You know, that's a lot of what we talk about here. So I'm just going to read the whole message so you guys can fully understand what I'm trying to answer. But this comes from Nicholas Linthicum 2871. Once again, thank you for your insane generosity. He says, I know you yourself have personally said you're bored of the following the leaks for Apple products. I mean, yeah, relatively bored. I mean, I would rather talk about Apple leaks and rumors than I would like sports, because I'm not a sports guy. So it's like, it's not the most interesting thing going on in my life right now, but just to be clear, I still get mildly curious whenever I find out about Apple working on something. I'm always like, does that sound real? Does that not sound real? It kind of pertains to my job, yes, but at the same time, it's not as interesting as it used to be. That's fair. But Nicholas says, as a company, do you think Apple still truly cares about the leak culture like they did during the iPhone 4 days? Which is kind of a very different stage of Apple. So I would argue probably less so, just because there's been so many iPhones since then. So that's question number one, is do they still care about it as much as they do? I mean, clearly Apple still very much wants to keep things under wraps. They like to surprise people. They don't like everything to leak, but Apple probably is now aware, after so many years of internet culture being around and YouTube leak culture being around for so long, they probably have admitted defeat to a certain extent and just accepted that, okay, so much of our manufacturing and so much of our stuff is outsourced, and so much of our CAD files leak early, or we have to send out renders early for case manufacturers. There's no way we can just keep all of this under wraps 100% of the time. They do their best, but I don't think they necessarily think it's the end of the world when something leaks, or they have to scrap the product or change the product so that it doesn't follow the leaks. I don't think they care that much, but they do what they can. And then question number two from Nicholas is, it seems most of the product leaks are so accurate due to manufacturers being overseas, they do not care to release things early. Do you ever see a future where Apple can try to stop the overseas leakage? Pretty much the only scenario in which I could envision them stopping is if they started, I don't know, manufacturing more things. Even domestically, stuff leaks though all the time. It's not like if they built iPhones in the US, somehow they could keep them more under wraps. What probably would help them keep iPhone designs or Mac designs or iPad refreshes more under wraps is if Apple did their own manufacturing. Again, I don't think that would completely stop it, because there's always going to be sources that, journalists can have contact with and say, hey, what's going on today? What's Apple working on? And things slip out. Humans are not perfect. Humans are not flawless. But the less humans you get involved in the manufacturing process, and typically there is more and more automation, the more time goes by. There's certain aspects of iPhone production that have been a lot more automated in recent years than previous, but there are still humans. But if we did ever reach a point where Apple found a way to almost completely and entirely manufacture all of their tech autonomously, it would probably be a lot easier to keep things under wraps and harder to find out. But my guess is there's just certain things that humans are not very good at replicating. Kayvon Javid, thank you for 5 months of support, by the way. That's very kind of you. Thank you. I tried to join the Discord, but I couldn't find the link. It's just discord.gg/Tailosive, I think. We have our own custom URL, so just look it up. I'm sure I'm sure it's somewhere. Um, and then number three, I think, is the big one. Um, it is a given that software is inherently harder to leak because anything could be scrapped or changed last second. However, do I think Apple inherently trolls us when it comes to leaking product events? Marketing it seems like it would take a while to get out, but it seems as if there is a rumored Apple event, but then plans totally change last second. To me, Apple probably needs time to host even a virtual event, especially if they want press at the park to film or even enough time to get products to the reviewers. It seems like we are getting a taste of that this year with the spring site refreshes, but a couple of years ago, I think he meant, we also had this during the spring as well with the rumored March 23rd, 2021 event, and then it got pushed to April of 2021 for the spring loaded event. Yeah, I think personally, I could be wrong, but I think us leakers think we're more important than we really are. Well, I'm not a leaker, but the people in the leak community think we have a bigger effect. Like a lot of the time, people have this. Thank you, Randy. Randy just posted it. Um, a lot of the time, I think people have this expectation that, oh, well, because lots of people reported on this announcement or because lots of people leaked that this happened, Apple decided to change their mind just to throw all the leakers off. And I mean that's a funny idea. It's hilarious for making skits like I do. Like let's joke about Tim Cook changing the product release cycle just to make Mark Gurman look bad. But genuinely, I think Apple's a big company. They're likely very structured. They likely have certain calendar, events scheduled with marketing guys and release guys and interviews that are, in PR departments that are all ready for particular launches. My personal guess is they mostly stick to the plan, and a lot of their plans are made months in advance. And a lot of the time we're wrong, and it makes the leak community feel a lot more vindicated or validated if they say, oh, well, Apple was going to do what I said, but they changed their mind later. Because then they find a way to be wrong, but also be right at the same time. I would say like 99 or 95% of the time, the leakers are just wrong. I don't think it's really Apple changing things at the last second or, changing that many things around purely because of, oh, well, we need the leak community to be wrong. I mean, I'm not against the concept of Apple delaying things or canceling things or pushing things back, but I don't think it's because they want leakers to be thrown off or they want to throw off the media or surprise people or surpass expectations in some way. I think they probably delay and postpone things, but it's probably more to do with the product than it is what the leakers are actually saying. So I hope that answers your question. Automation means more humans involved in development stage, surely? Uh, Possibly, but I mean, there's probably a certain amount of humans involved in that regardless. You still have to have a human involved to figure out what a human's going to do. So those people who are designing the assembly process are there regardless of if it's automated or man-made. But yeah, robots have a harder time leaking things. I have a conspiracy theory that iPads only stuck around as R&D for Apple Silicon for the Mac. It does kind of feel like the iPad hardware team is purely there just to experiment with what they can do hardware-wise because the iPad hardware is always way up here. But then iPad OS development is always like a subsection of iOS. Like all of the software team just works on iOS, and then at the last second they're like, okay, oh, also you should probably optimize that stuff for the iPad hardware. You should probably bring some of that iPhone iOS features to the iPad as well. There's so little time and attention put into the iPad software, but there is all of these like hardware exercises, I think, a lot of the time. Don't call me Shirley. Hey, Dad. Good to see you. Has anything leaked with Apple's AI model? Not really. All we know is Tim Cook and who was it? John Turnus have both made references to Apple's generative AI features and said that they're very excited to show them to us. So that's from Apple themselves. That's not really a leak, but I agree. iPad OS is very much unthought out and does not take advantage of its amazing hardware because iPads have had great hardware for a while. But I hope that answers Nicholas's questions. I think I summarized my thoughts pretty well. But we also have other questions from Tailosive Tech Pro members, starting with Elaw, because he asked next. When looking at what Apple does as a company today and comparing it to Steve Jobs' Apple, it seems like Apple has had to become more aware of other companies. When Steve Jobs was a part of products, it was all about making his vision. Now I see more parity between companies as Apple releases products. This could be a side effect of reaching peak smartphone, as you have talked about before. What I'm curious about is if Jobs was still around today, do you think he would still be focused on his vision? Yeah, but I don't know how long you've been watching Apple, Elaw, but I think you're forgetting a lot of Steve Jobs' comparisons. If you go back and watch a lot of Steve Jobs, hosted events, which were most Apple events back then, he loved to bring up the competition. Maybe we're remembering two different things, but yes, Steve Jobs was very focused on what he thought a product should be like. He really liked his vision, and even to a certain extent didn't care as much if the product sold all that well. He just wanted it to be good. And if in some tech specky way the competition did something better, he was like, well, I don't care about those tech specs because my vision and making sure the product is what I want it to be is what matters in the end. But he was slowly becoming more open-minded as the years went by. He was willing to have his mind changed. But if you recall back in the iPhone unveiling, he loved to showcase, here's the competition, here's what a BlackBerry, here's what a flip phone is capable of doing versus our phone. Here's when he unveiled the iPod, I remember him comparing it to, a Walkman, an MP3 player. And here's the problem with these existing music pocketable devices. And here's what the iPod fixes that with. Or when he unveiled the MacBook Air or a MacBook Pro, he was like, okay, here's what Sony or Dell has available today. It's way clunkier, and here's its performance. And this is a decent laptop, but ours is better. He loved to do those comparisons. So that's where I don't quite see Steve didn't want to acknowledge his competition. I would say Apple today is far more hesitant to talk about the competition than Steve Jobs was back when he was running the company. From what I recall watching a lot of previous Apple keynotes, I think he loved to bring up the competition, particularly if he looked better. Whereas these days, Apple gets very vague with their comparisons. It's like, it's 4 times faster than the best-selling PC laptop. What is the best-selling PC laptop? I don't know, probably some cheap, junky thing. Or it's 5 times faster than Intel Core i7 processor. And everyone's like, well, why are you comparing it to the i7? There's better processors than that. So Apple has to get very selective and kind of weird with their comparisons, whereas Steve Jobs would straight up bring up the competitor's laptop in full view, even compliment the laptop in certain regards. I remember, I think when he unveiled the MacBook Pro or something, he was saying like, hey, this is a popular laptop that still has a good amount of performance, but we wanted to push it to the next level. Let's ask Dad, because Dad remembers all those days. Dad says Jobs was always about making things smaller. Apple Vision would have been kind of big for him. Yeah, I think I agree with that. I don't know if Steve would have unveiled Apple Vision Pro today. He would have wanted it to be thinner and lighter before launching it, but it's been a long time. I just want a product that has the same chaos energy as the iPod Nano, just bonkers redesign every year. That did change a lot, did it, over time? Yeah, it was kind of like really narrow at first, and then the screen got really tall. Or no, first it got really square. You had the 3rd gen iPod Nano. I have a case somewhere that has all these old iPods. Then they had the squarish iPod Nano, which my mom still has and still works. And then my first Apple product ever was the 4G, where they made it all skinny and the tall display. And then the 5G, the screen got even taller and they added a camera to the back. Then the 6th generation was basically a watch. It was like a big iPod Shuffle with a screen. It was like a square screen, and you could even buy wristbands for it, and it had a clock app and everything. But it still had a 30-pin connector. It still had a headphone jack. There was no Bluetooth back then. And then the last one was the 7th gen. They went back to it being kind of skinny, but it was the only iPod Nano with a multi-touch display. But it had a home button, and it did have Bluetooth. I think that was the only iPod Nano to ever rock Bluetooth, which was pretty cool. And then that was it. It was done. Now I think the Apple Watch kind of serves the purpose of the iPod Nano. I don't think we need those to come back. There's nostalgia for them. We can still have our memories, but there's no need for the product to exist anymore. All I want out of iPadOS is a watch app and Apple Watch integration for a minimalist setup. I'm just trying to figure out who's pairing their watches to their iPads. I agree with you. I'm just trying to figure out who's doing that. But we can't even get a calculator app on the dang iPad, man. Let's focus on a calculator app, and then we can talk about Apple Watch compatibility. It's so distant from me now because now I don't have a watch or an iPad. It would be awesome if you talk about Xiaomi and Huawei for how similar they are with iPhone, and they could change the industry. They could change the industry of how similar they are. Well, the first problem is those phones aren't available in my region. Um, I've gone overseas and seen people use them, but it's kind of the same issue whenever I talk about Android phones. Is there's not that much to say. It's in general the smartphone industry is very much matured and plateaued, so it's hard to find things to talk about, which is why, spoiler alert, there might be more of these live streams in the future, because a lot of the time where I kind of start running low on interesting news topics, or I'm not particularly finding anything too interesting, I go, well, rather than me try to guess what you guys want to talk about, why don't I do a live stream so I can figure out exactly what you guys want to talk about? And a lot of the time, it's just little questions like that, where what are your thoughts on Xiaomi and Huawei? And I can tell you, like, well, I have a little bit of experience with them, but nothing about the hardware necessarily jumps out to me, and that kind of answers your question. And also, I can figure out what else people are interested in talking about. But before I forget, let's make sure I don't skip over YJ Choi's question as we're going through Tailosive Tech Pro member questions. Do I think there will ever come a day when Apple stops updating a product line without discontinuing it? Oh, interesting. For example, I didn't read this, by the way, before I went live, so I'm reading it with you guys for the first time. For example, 50 years from now, when we're on the iPhone 74, in this theoretical, Apple dropped the number suffix and puts the year in parentheses like they do for MacBooks. They have run out of things to add, and they brought all EU exclusive features to everyone globally. So Apple says this is the final iPhone for the time being. If we think of new things to add, we will update you. If you could also answer the same question for software updates. You're not going crazy. I didn't like my previous question, so I deleted it. Oh, wow. You had a different question that I didn't even catch. I want to refresh. Where can I find that one? Okay, that's an interesting question. Yeah, like into the deep future where they're not using suffixes. I don't know, at least right now, it feels relatively possible for new silicon and new chips to become available. So I feel like there will always be a certain level of new model year, even if the model year differences are very small, just like how Marquez's great example that I reference a lot is, you know, should you buy a 2024 Toyota Camry versus a 2023 Toyota Camry? Are there a lot of differences between the two? Probably not, but if someone is going out to buy a brand new car, and they decide that, yes, they want a new one, they don't want to buy it used, they don't want anything with any miles on it, you know, they want a brand new car, they might as well get the latest generation. If they insist on buying new, you want to make sure that they buy the latest state-of-the-art tech, even if there's very small differences between the two. So I guess the hypothetical that YJ Choi is throwing out there is like, what would Apple have to do to get to a point where even the silicon is not worth upgrading? Like we've reached peak silicon. It's 1 nanometer architecture. Everything is super efficient, super fast. I don't know. You'll have to ask me in 2074, but I think there will always be some kind of minor improvement. And yes, every year it gets a little bit more minor. Every year it's, capture button, or, we figured out how to make the battery life a couple hours better. And it seems like, at least in the tech community, it doesn't have to be that much better for a lot of people to justify buying it. Personally, I think it's very hard to justify buying a new iPhone every year. You know, I say as a hypocrite rocking a 15 Pro, but that was mainly because I thought Type-C was such a massive upgrade. A silicon atom is 0.13 nanometers, so we are getting close to the limit. 1 picometer architecture. Yeah, we'll see how close we can get. But if Apple runs out of things, I think, they pay a lot of people to think of new features, new marketing gimmicks. If there's demand for it, they'll probably get around to it. I know it's probably not happening this year or next year, but if enough of us keep shaking our fist asking for a budget, not a budget iPhone, but a small Pro iPhone. I saw people asking for that earlier. I just want a mini iPhone that has ProMotion and a really good camera. Right now, Apple's just making phones based on where the money is, but if they start genuinely running out of new features, which I don't think they will. I think they pay a lot of people who have a lot of time on their hands to come up with new hardware ideas, new software ideas. Who knows? Maybe we're going to be chasing a whole new roadmap of silicon with all this generative AI talk that Apple's trying to hype up. Maybe at Dub, they're like, okay, this is just the beginning, and it's kind of like starting from scratch with some technology. Whereas, as far as displays and cameras go, it feels like we've kind of run out of things to do. It's like, okay, we can come up with super high resolution video, super high resolution photos. Now what? Okay, like no one's complaining about the picture quality, but if they come up with some fancy generative AI features on the iPhone, they might be really cool and really handy, but have a lot of lost potential, or not lost potential, but just potential of like, oh, well, this feature could be so much better if we had more neural cores, if we had more improved silicon that could generate large language models and that kind of thing, or crank out AI generated, maybe it starts with pictures, but then we're asking, oh, maybe the next generation silicon can do video. So I think that personally I don't think personally they're going to quite reach a point where they can't come up with new ideas. I mean, frickin' lawnmower companies come out with new lawnmowers every year. How many different versions of a lawnmower can we think of, right? Same thing with chainsaws. Same thing probably with hammers. Are they the kind of thing you go out and buy once a year? No, but they come up with stuff. They think of things, whether it's this one's more environmentally friendly, which we're kind of already seeing with the Apple Watch Series 9. Is that what we're on? Holy crap, I'm forgetting. Oh, jeez. But yeah, half of the talk when they unveiled the Series 9 was just talking about, wow, isn't it amazing that, this is a carbon neutral Apple product? And it's like, yeah, but does that mean I'm supposed to go out and buy it just because it's carbon neutral? Like, what does it actually do for me? We could start seeing more of that as we get closer to 2030, more and more Apple products. Half of the presentation is just talking about how great this product is for the environment, not so much why should you buy it? I mean, what's probably best for the environment is to not buy anything and just keep using what you already have. Let's see. What would Steve Jobs think of the capture button on the iPhone 16? I don't know. You'd have to ask him. I don't speak for him. I read his book and I've watched a lot of interviews with him, but I don't know. I don't think Steve was like against buttons. Steve Jobs had the home button back. We got rid of more buttons and features since Steve Jobs has passed. So I think if it was handy and it was convenient and it had some features that made the picture taking or video taking experience more enjoyable, then sure, why not? He might be on board with it. Why not? I mean, I don't know what the question's getting at, Maverick. If you're trying to, well, Steve Jobs was a minimalist. He would never add a button to the iPhone. It's like we got rid of things that he added to the iPhone. No, I think you could make the argument that, oh, well, if he was such a minimalist, why would he unveil an iPad? If he's a minimalist, he would just want an iPhone and a MacBook like I have right now, right? And that would be enough. But no, he was in favor of there being a product category between the iPhone and the MacBook. So that was one of the last, products he unveiled before he died, was the post-PC era, a more personal device with more screen real estate and more flexibility than an iPhone, but it kind of just stayed mostly on the coffee table, or, you could read books on it, and just having a large multi-touch experience was supposed to be better in a lot of ways than using a Mac or an iPhone. But I don't know if he would have still felt that way if he would have known that iPhones were going to get as big as they have gotten, and that Apple was going to turn the iPad into so much of a Mac anyway, right? Let's see. What is Burkhart saying? I think in a world where cellular Apple Vision, where we hypothetically got to a world where we're similar in size to the glasses, not as many people would buy iPhones, especially if Apple Vision gets a lot more popular. I personally disagree, mainly because I think there's huge features that cannot be replicated on Apple Vision, or at least not that I can see. Especially these days, a lot of people buy iPhones for the camera. And there's a ton of camera features, whether it be, FaceTime calls or taking selfies with your friends. Those kinds of things are going to be much, much, much harder to emulate on Vision Pro, because people aren't going to want to just, even if they're a pair of glasses, are you going to want to have these things on and say, okay, let's all take a picture of us at lunch or at Disneyland or whatever. So you got to take it off, open the camera app like this or whatever, take them off, hold them out like this. Okay, are we all in the picture? I don't know. The eyesight displays are kind of dim and small because I had to make them thin and light to fit on my face, right? So it's like, okay, are we all in it? Click. All right, let me see how it turned out. Oh, it's great. Can I share this to you? Opposed to just rectangle, hold it out, click. Hey, look at the picture. Hey, look at the picture. Oh, I don't like the way I look in that picture. Let's take it again. Okay, delete. Let's try one more time. I think the iPhone replaced so many things all at once, that I don't think smartphones are going to be replaced, at least in my lifetime. I think that the way we use them might change, but look at it similarly. The iPhone was super popular and changed the world, right? But did it kill off the Mac? Did the Mac die? No, it's still here. Maybe we use it a little bit differently than we did the iPhone. Or the way we used Macs before the iPhone. Like, there's a lot more people buying laptops now than desktops, and a lot more of the time, people used to buy laptops for writing documents and email, but now it's like, if you just need to write emails and write documents, you could probably get by with a phone or a tablet or something. You don't necessarily need to buy $1,000 laptop to do those basic things. So now you justify a laptop if, okay, I need to write code or I need to make music like Randy does. iPhone mini is the Steve Jobs iPhone. And like Steve Jobs, it is now dead. Sorry, too soon. Sadly, the mini iPhone was killed off far too soon by a different thing, but maybe it'll force people to live more in the moment instead of taking pictures all the time. Yeah, that's a nice thought, but it's usually not how humanity works. It's kind of like saying everyone's going to figure out that all this fructose and sugar is bad for them, and then vegetable sales are going to skyrocket. It's like, yeah, that would be great. That would be good, but it's not going to happen. Or expecting public transportation to kill off car ownership. It's like, oh man, it would be so cool if all the governments just agreed and got together and said, you know what, we're going to design our cities from the ground up to all be public transportation friendly, and everything is going to work, and people won't need to own cars anymore. Yeah, that would be great if it happened, but it's just not going to happen. People are addicted to phones, and phones are always going to be cheaper than glasses. They're always going to have better battery life than glasses. Even if you found a way to make Apple Vision capable glasses $500 or $400, then with that exact same tech, you could make a smartphone that's $50, and has 5 times the battery life. Maybe it'll. I hope it forces more people to live in the moment, but I think what's far more likely is they're just going to keep using their phones. My dad has said, I think free hardware in exchange for more expensive internet service with add-ons and apps, perhaps a high-speed connection, all Apple. They definitely seem to want to be pushing more towards services long term. I don't think it's necessarily working, but I mean, it was probably wise looking at how Tim Cook ran Apple, because he knew that a lot of companies like Meta, like Google, like Amazon, they make most of their money through services, not through hardware sales. So he tried his best to reposition Apple as more of a services company because the revenue is a bit more consistent, reliable, and he was probably concerned, like a lot of us are talking about now, Tim Cook was probably concerned that the hardware differences year over year were going to get so small that nobody would be able to justify buying a new iPhone every year. And because, iPhone 13, 14 become so similar, then people are just going to go, why buy a new iPhone? People hold on to their iPhones longer. So he said, okay, this isn't sustainable. We need to position Apple into more of a services company than a hardware company. But what they probably either didn't expect, or probably what's more likely is they just didn't want to assume, because it's potentially dangerous to assume that your bread and butter for revenue is never going to go away, although in my opinion it probably won't, is that people every couple of years, just out of annoyance, are just going to upgrade their iPhones because their old ones, the battery goes bad or the storage fills up, or they know there's better cameras coming out. Apple can probably, even with fairly small improvements year over year, keep the company afloat just by, how many people use an iPhone around the planet now? Probably close to 1 billion. I think they said there's like 2 billion active Apple devices on the planet. So probably around half of those are iPhones. So if you have like a billion people that all buy a new iPhone every 4 to 5 years, that's still a lot. That's still a lot of people buying new phones periodically, and that demand, that refresh cycle of 3 4 years, however long people go between upgrades, is probably enough revenue to keep the whole company afloat. To the point that they don't need to become a huge services company, even though they are making a lot more now from services than they used to. The iPhone still hasn't, been killed off, and I don't think people truly appreciate how disruptive it is, how special it is, how rare it is for a technology to be this impactful and also relatively affordable to the masses. Um, Frustration is the only reason to upgrade for most average consumers. That's absolutely true, Martin. I was actually just talking to a friend a couple of days ago, and they knew I make tech videos, so she was just trying to make small talk and keep me in the loop. And she said, "Hey, I got a new iPhone," and I was like, "Oh, cool. What'd you get?" And it was like it was the 15 Pro Max, and she came from a iPhone 11. Wes asked, "Do I miss my iPhone 11?" Heck no. I love USB-C. I love the smaller footprint of the 15 Pro. I think it's a little lighter than the 11, but I could be wrong. Anyway, 15 Pro is like a near perfect iPhone to me. I love it. I don't miss the iPhone 11, but my friend who upgraded from an iPhone 11 to a 15 Pro Max, I was like, "So how do you like it?" And she was like, "Oh, it's way too big. I'm like, it's hard for me to reach the whole screen." And I was like, "Well, why didn't you go with the smaller one?" And she said they didn't have any in stock, which just brought so much joy to my heart, because I was like, we talk about all day on this channel, or on Discord, or on Twitter, about, oh, customers want more of this, customers want more of this. Like, people are gonna buy certain phones because they have certain features they care about. And what we continue to misunderstand is how little people care about so many of these phones. People will use a phone until it stops working and they get frustrated with it, or it gets more buggy, or the storage gets full, or the battery starts deteriorating. A lot of the time, even if you tell people, "Hey, you could just replace the battery and probably fix a lot of your problems," even then, a lot of the time, people would probably go, "Yeah, but then I gotta still worry about my storage, and there's new phones out now. I'd rather just..." So people like will go to the carrier. She went to a Verizon store. She didn't go to an Apple store. She just People will replace their phone like they get their car worked on. They don't know much about the engine. They don't know much about tires. They just go in and go, "Okay, can you fix this? Can you get it back to the state in which I drive it?" Or if it's really bad and it's really expensive, then they'll just go, "Okay, you know what? I just need to get rid of this car and I'll buy a new one." A lot of people just live life that way, especially for something as relatively affordable as a smartphone. They go into the carrier place and they're just like, "Hey, you know what? This phone's getting kind of old. I need a new phone. Do you have a new phone?" And they go, "Yeah, we have the new 15 Pro Max. Would you like that?" And you go, "You got anything smaller?" And the carrier goes, "No, we sold out of the smaller one." And they go, "Okay." And I even asked her. It was like, "Well, can't you buy like a smaller one and ship it?" And she was like, "Yeah, but I didn't want to have to deal with all that and wait for a new phone in the mail." She wanted to just get it over with right then and there. She wanted to walk into the carrier place, be out of there in 15 minutes with a new phone that was better than her old phone. So she chose the phone she didn't exactly want, just to get the whole decision-making process over with faster. And I was like, "I love that." And she was like, "What? Is that wrong? Is that bad?" I was like, "No, no, that's great. I love the fact that that's the way your mind works. And that's probably the way most people's mind works." I was like, "You're a normal human being. You're not a weirdo like me that's talking about, oh, but I want it to be a 5.4-inch display instead of a 6.1-inch display. That would be a little bit more comfortable in the hand. I would prefer the weight to be a little bit under this amount of ounces." And, it's just like, who cares? Most people just walk in and go, "You got a new one? Okay, that's good." Same thing with, I know people that got the regular 15. They don't know about, you'd have to explain to them what 60 hertz means. If you have to explain to them why it's a bad deal, then it's not that bad a deal. um, Dad says, "Remember when the sales guy at Best Buy tried to sell you an Android? You were about 12. You said, 'You seem to have a lot of those in stock.'" Yeah. That was back before I had a smartphone. My parents and I had finally agreed that I was old enough or mature enough. I probably wasn't, but we had agreed that I was old enough to get an iPhone 5 back when that had just came out, and we were trying to see where they had them in stock. So we went to Best Buy, and I said, "Do you guys have any iPhone 5s in stock?" And he said, "No, but we do have the Galaxy S3." And the sales guy there was like, "And it's way better than the iPhone 5. It's got a higher pixel density and it's bigger." And I was like, "Wow, if it's so great, why do you have so many of them?" Something like that. My early Apple sheep roots. Dad really liked that one. I don't know if I said it to his face or not, but it made a lasting impact on Dad because he still likes sharing that story. It is a good story. But yeah, I don't remember where. I think we got it through Verizon later because we had Verizon at the time. I'm so glad I'm not on Verizon anymore. Every time I talk to people that are still on them and I hear what they're paying for cell phone service, I just cringe a little bit. But I try also to not make people regret their decision. So if they're already committed to it, like I had a friend who bought he didn't buy it either. He financed it. Yeah, he just went to the Verizon place and said, I want an iPhone. He had a Pixel, and he was like, "I'm tired of my Pixel. I want an iPhone." And they had some really good carrier discount, I think, on an iPhone 14 Pro Max. So he got a 14 Pro Max after the 15 had come out, and I was like, "Oh, you got the most expensive phone with Lightning." And he was like, "It's $20 a month through Verizon." And I was like, "Okay, well, I guess that's pretty dang cheap. Even that's $240 a year. So $480 after 2 years. I guess the carriers are willing to finance the hardware, assuming you stick with their overpriced membership." But I was just like, "Yeah, okay, that's a pretty good deal." AJ, thank you for 18 months. What's up with your space gray iMac? It's not here. I love the iMac Pro. I still think that's the best iMac of all time, including the M1 and M3 iMacs. Yes, those are still ugly. Those are still horrible. I would recommend them to no one. But as far as iMacs are concerned, that's the best looking one. But yeah, I just don't use it anymore. The silicon was outperformed, and my MacBook Pro is just a better Mac in pretty much every way. And I'm editing on the go a lot. There's just a lot of times where my wife is doing a lot of volunteering. That's actually, I think, where she is right now, or she's doing some trainings for helping it. Whatever. She's volunteering, and oftentimes it's like, okay, we're volunteering at this city, and then we're going to a friend's house after she's done volunteering, so we don't want to drive all the way home. We kind of live in a rural area, so it involves driving a lot. Even though I work from home, I drive probably more than 50 miles a day on average, which is funny. Good thing we have an electric car. But we didn't want to drive all the way back home and then all the way to our friend's house. So she's like, "Can you just film some videos?" Sorry, by the way, to the channel members who have been asking for more members-only streams, behind-the-scenes streams. The reason I haven't done a lot lately is because oftentimes I'm not filming and editing videos all at one time. I'm like filming a video and then editing it several days later, or film a video, edit half of it, stop, come back, edit another half. And because I don't want to do like a bunch of 10-minute streams about the same video, it's like, okay, if I don't do a behind the scenes stream, it's because I didn't do the whole thing at one point. But needless to say, there's a lot of times where I drop my wife off for volunteering and then I work in the car until she's done, and then so I'm editing on the go a lot. And I just couldn't do that if I had a Mac Studio or a Mac Mini. And there's just been a ton of circumstances in the past couple of weeks where it's like, oh, I'll edit at this person's house, or I'll edit in the car when you're doing errands or volunteering or whatever. So she's just darting around a lot, and we like to be together because we're married, and believe it or not, we kind of like each other. So we like being together when we hang out and go places. So I'm very grateful that Apple Silicon exists and allows me to get a lot of work done on a mobile machine now, which couldn't be done with the iMac Pro, but the iMac Pro, for its time, was still an amazing machine. Let me make sure I didn't miss anything back here. Makima, that's who I forgot. 28 months of support. Good evening from Japan. Have a nice day. Wow, that's weird to think we got people in Japan watching us. Thank you very, very much for the support. They made iMacs with M1 and M3. I thought they died with the Apple Silicon transit. No, you're right, Dylan. They did die. They didn't make the cut. Are you excited for Series 10 or X? I'm curious. I don't think excitement is the right word. excitement would imply like, oh boy, what are they gonna do? I'm more like, what are they gonna do? That's kind of how I'm thinking, because there's all this talk about like, I don't know, something about it being the 10th generation. They want to do something bigger for it or something special for it, and I'm like, hmm, how could you make the Apple Watch different? How can you make it stand out? I tried Samsung flagship phones recently, S24 Ultra, and I felt the camera on the Galaxy is so similar to iPhone style. They're all great in my opinion. That's part of the reason I haven't reviewed one. Is not because I think they're bad. It's just because I don't think there's much to say. But especially with the case of Android, I would not buy a brand new Android flagship on launch day. I know that that's the exciting thing to do, and all the YouTubers do it because this is the new phone. But because Android resale value is known for tanking so fast, I'm not an Android guy. But if I was, I would totally buy last year's model because, for one, especially with the case of Samsung, because Samsung tends to have first dibs on a lot of hardware features. Um, their last generation model is usually so similar to the new one, and it's usually like half the price or less. Sometimes it's like a third of the price or a quarter of the price to just buy last year's model, which has almost no differences. It's very, very small differences year over year, even less noticeable than iPhone year over year differences. The iPhone had a big one with Type C. Excuse me. The iPhone had a big one with the whole Type C transition, but and, Galaxies have been on Type C for years now, so it's harder to get excited about. But oh man, you can get S23 Ultras for so cheap now compared to just buying a brand new S24 Ultra. Um, Waiting for that sweet Final Cut Pro 10 watch edition to drop. What would get me excited personally? I just want the ceramic designs to come back. I'm not saying I would buy one new, but I really liked that ceramic Series 5, and I know that not enough people were buying them, which is probably why they stopped making them, but I thought they just looked so clean. I really liked that Apple Watch edition, but they killed that off when the Ultra came around, I guess. Burkhart says, do you ever think about an alternate reality where you actually bought a 16-inch MacBook Pro in 2019 and sold your iMac Pro before its value tanked? No, I don't, honestly. I came close, I think, to buying that 16-inch MacBook Pro that came out in 2019. I remember trying it and really liking it. I think a few months ago I listened to an old podcast when I was reviewing it, and the performance was pretty close to my iMac Pro. I remember exporting videos on it, and it was about the same speed as my iMac. Purely the only reason I didn't keep the 2019 MacBook Pro was because there was so much talk about the Apple Silicon transition, and I knew that was around the corner, and I knew I didn't want to buy a new Mac every year. So I said, no, my iMac Pro is getting me by just fine. I can wait a little bit longer for the Apple Silicon MacBook Pros to come out. And that's what I did. And now I'm very grateful I did. But I wasn't that interested in selling the iMac Pro at the time because I knew that it was still very capable and it was still very handy. And my wife also really likes it. That's part of the reason it's not here, is because my wife wanted it, so we have it in the guest room. But we still have it, and she likes it. I don't think she uses it all that much, but she didn't want to sell it. I was all in favor of like, yeah, we don't need this anymore. We could sell it. But my wife was like, no, it's good. And she likes that it's got storage on it. And she likes bigger screens, and she likes the, sound system on it and everything. So she was all in favor of keeping it from the beginning. So I would have had that same debate with her back in 2019 as we have now, where I'm still like, I could depart with it. It'd be fine. And she's like, no, let's hang on to it. She likes being more resourceful and holding on to things and finding meaning for them. And I'm more of the wasteful type that's like, this doesn't bring me joy anymore. Let's sell it. I need something else. I'm always like that. I want the new thing, so let's get rid of the old thing. But I'm trying to combat that because it's not healthy and it's not productive, and it's also just not what the world needs more of, consumerism. So I probably would have kept it regardless. Mike says, can I pair my Apple Watch Series 10 with my Xbox Series 10? Yes, that's how it works. They're both owned by X, Elon Musk company. I had a scary dream about Elon Musk last night. Oh my God. I had some deep-rooted fears of that man I did not anticipate. Holy crap. It was like that, I don't watch Game of Thrones, but you know that like red wedding scene from Game of Thrones where like spoiler alert, like a bunch of people die all at one time. It was like that, but Elon Musk was killing people. It was crazy. I woke up legitimately scared, and I was like, I need to buy a Rivian. I am now terrified of this man. That was weird. We need more pixel rants, but I know that they are getting better. I know. I miss doing the pixel rants too. I know a lot of people love those, but the truth is they need to be justified. You can't just rant for the sake of ranting. Things need to be rant worthy. That's what makes them special, right? Josh LaRose says, I tried to wear an Apple Watch 2 at times and it never worked out. Series 0 was too slow and now the watch bands put too much pressure on the nerves in my wrist and cause intense pain. There's got to be some different watch bands you could try. The X wedding. Yeah, that's it. Let's see. If I ever went to an Android, it has to make me feel like it's unique. I actually do have a side Android, the Pixel 5. Love stock Android experience and the design. Felt really great. I really enjoyed the Pixel 8, and Burkhardt brought out a good deal. I don't know if it's still going on right now, but this is not a paid sponsorship. It's not even a referral thing. It's not an affiliate thing. I don't get any credit for what I'm about to tell you, but Burkhardt found out that Mint Mobile is selling a Pixel 8, which I reviewed on this channel. I thought that was a great phone. It's a 120 hertz display. It's an amazing camera. It's the faster speed USB-C port. It's got good battery life, good charging. Great design, by the way. Very comfortable to hold. Has the visor camera bump so it doesn't wobble. I love the Pixel 8. $300 off, an already reasonably priced phone. And when you buy it through Mint Mobile, it comes with 6 months of free Mint service. It's not like their highest plan, but still, you get cellular service, unlimited calls and texts, and I think 5 gigs of 5G data a month for less than $500. It was like $490, and I was like, dang. I'm not an Android guy, but if I was, holy crap, those are the kind of deals I would jump on. Sometimes I wish I was an Android guy because I could probably get way better deals and maybe I would have more to talk about on this channel. Sometimes, I kid you not, I've genuinely considered just switching to Android to have more news to talk about on the Tailosive Tech channel. The problem is so much of the Tailosive Tech brand was built up on covering Apple and watching Apple, and I think it's very noticeable that when I talk about Android, the videos don't perform as well as they do when I talk about Apple. So I know that it would probably alienate or at least annoy a very large chunk of my audience, because most of my audience is like, I want to talk about Apple products because that's what I buy, that's what I know. But I seriously have had many long talks, long considerations on, well, should it be boring and about Apple or have more things to talk about in about Android or a mix of both. And yeah, I still struggle with figuring out what should be prioritized, what should be talked about. I know people suggest one thing. It's easy to be like, oh, I bet if you did this, you'd get a bunch more views. And then it's like, yeah, you'd think that. And then I try to do it, and it's like, nope, it's not really worth it. And Enusan, I'm not even going to try to pronounce your last name because it's the longest last name I've ever seen. But he says, what is your opinion on YouTubers clearly overhating Apple just for clicks from the Android community? Pays the bills. I don't know. I don't really care what other channels do. I can't be motivated too much by hatred or criticalness. That only gets me so far. I can rant a little bit, but ultimately the reason I'm interested in technology and the reason I like talking about tech stuff and all that is because I'm an optimistic guy and I like positivity. There's a lot of EV channels. I mostly watch EV channels, by the way. But tech channels in general, there's a lot of them that I just can't watch because all they do is complain. And I think that can only be so interesting. That can only get so far. Or also, there's a lot of EV channels that are just purely there to complain about how the media covers EVs. Even that annoys me, even though I agree with it. And then, like, I'm a big electric vehicle fan and I believe electric vehicles are the future, but I can't watch someone else just complain about how the media covers electric vehicles because it's like, okay, but they're just trying to generate clicks. That's just a journalist working for an agency that's sure, are they reporting things honestly and accurately? Probably not, but they have a job to do, and they probably have a boss or a manager that says you need to generate a certain amount of clicks. So that's one of the downsides of free speech and free market capitalism is anybody can say whatever they want. That includes dumb things, and some people say a lot of dumb things or a lot of critical things, some of which aren't even true. But that's how a lot of businesses are made, and if you want to support that, you can. But to me, it doesn't bother me. It's just like, well, I'm not going to focus on that because it's not interesting to me. I like focusing on things that are interesting and excite me, or at least captivate me a little bit. Like, probably the most exciting iPhone in the next year that I'm looking forward to is not the iPhone 16, but the next SE. It sounds like they're finally taking the SE in a bit of a different direction, and knowing that it'll be affordable and still have Type-C and still have a pretty big, OLED display and all that is like, man, I think a lot of people out there are going to really appreciate this phone. That kind of thing grabs my attention a lot more than, did you hear what so-and-so said about this? And did you, it's like, yeah, they're wrong, but I'm not going to just dwell on it. I don't know. That's not a good motivator, in my opinion. I can't just wake up in the morning and go, who's wrong today? Who am I going to go argue with? That doesn't excite me. I mean, I like bouncing ideas off people and stuff, but if your FSD referral dreams come true and you could sell your Model 3 for $30K and buy a Rivian R3 for $35K, would I do it? There would have to be a bit more dream scenarios on top of that, because even if I got a Rivian R3, now I would have to pay for charging. With the Tesla and the referral program, I get free charging. So if Rivian came out with a referral program and I could get free charging on the Adventure Network, and then they also built an Adventure Network charger on my nearby, relatively close by. Right now, I'm not even close to a supercharger, but I'm closer to a supercharger than I am an Adventure Network charger. And also, the other hypothetical is if Tesla removed the free charging perk. So if I suddenly could not get free charging from my Model 3 anyway, maybe switching to an R3 would be worth considering. But I don't know. That's a lot of maybe. And the R3 is still a maybe at this point, because who knows if, hopefully Rivian survives. I think they will, but there's a chance they don't. Anyway, you should do a lucid rant on EV. I don't know. It's the same thing. It's like, there's so much negativity already in the world and in the YouTube space that I would rather focus more and talk more about things that are exciting to me. And I have done a lot of critical hit pieces on Lucid, and I tick off a lot of the Lucid community. There's a lot of really passionate Lucid fans, and I don't enjoy ticking people off or trying to convince someone that their preference or what they like is wrong. Just like, if you enjoy Android, my goal is not to convince you that you don't like Android, I'm not trying to convince people that they should all buy iPhones and they'd all be happier. It's like, you do you. I mostly on this channel talk about what's interesting to me and what I enjoy. And somehow that convinces people. I still get it sometimes. Oh, Drew, I used to hate Apple, but then I watched your channel and now I like Apple. And it's like, I never tried to change anybody's mind. I wasn't trying to argue in favor of this being better. I've always just been, this makes more sense for me. So that's why I want to keep using an iPhone or keep using a Mac, is because for my lifestyle, for my workflow, this is what works better. If Windows works better for you, or if Android works better for you, all the better to you. You talk about that on your communities or your channel, and it's not that interesting to me, but you do you, right? It's harder to justify, like, okay, now let me talk about why I don't like this and why you're wrong to like this, like, even when I don't enjoy just like uprooting or riling up a big community of people. Let's see how many people I can anger today. There was a little bit of that with my whole iOS is growing, Android is shrinking video, which I kind of suspected might have a good shelf life, as most of the videos on my channel do not have a good shelf life. But that one seemed to have done pretty well, and there's still a regular number of people tuning into it and commenting. And, even as I post new videos, that one keeps getting new comments, and people go, "Oh, well, what you're misunderstanding is this, or you're not getting this," and it's like, yeah, people take that personally. And I was trying to be a lot more objective about it. I was like, I didn't say iOS is better than Android. I'm just saying that market share, globally speaking, which is funny because I kept getting comments saying that's just the US market. And I'm like, no, all of the data we talked about in that video is specifically referring to global data. None of that was restricted to any particular country. That was just talking about in the world over the past 5-6 years, iOS market share has been on the rise, Android market share has been on the decline, which is interesting. And I'm just going, why? Let's talk about why we think that's happening. And I was like, the naive, bare bones, simplistic way to look at that is, well, there's just more and more stupid people. Everyone is stupid, so everyone's buying iOS. Because clearly, if people were smart, they would all buy Android. I think that's a really, baseless generalization or just assumption to give on the public. Well, the reason any particular service or product is growing is purely because everyone's an idiot. Like, okay, sure, you can believe that. I joked about that, and then people went along and still commented it unironically. But I wanted to explore more where I was like, well, maybe they're doing something right. If it's paying off and there's more people switching to it, even as smartphones are growing into more countries, even less developed countries that are lower income, shouldn't that result in Android market share rising, not declining? So he's like, iOS is doing something right. It's just a debate about what it is. And a lot of the defense Fandroid commentary from that was just, well, it's because everyone's an idiot. Sorry, you're right. Everyone is stupid because if anyone had a brain, they would choose what you like. There's no other reason. Let's see. I have the regular Note 10 for weeks now. Oh, good for you. Yeah, Canoe is only $80 million. There's a lot of people that could buy Canoe, the whole company now. I bought a Mazda last week and it has CarPlay. As small as it is, I'm scared I'm going to love it too much and not want a Tesla in the future anymore since it won't have it. I've tried CarPlay. It's kind of neat, but I would still say a well-designed, from the ground up software experience car is still probably the better way to do it. But it's fancier to have iOS. In the USA, I've literally seen women saying, don't talk to me if you don't have an iPhone. Yeah, I hear those stories. I don't think that's like everybody, but still, the iPhone didn't randomly get that street credibility or that preference from the general public. It earned that. I don't think it's necessarily just because, iOS market share is growing because every woman on earth thinks the exact same way and says the exact same thing. I think that's isolated. I mean, it happens more than once, I'm sure, but it's not, I don't think it's the majority of people. But there is a simplicity to the whole iMessage experience. And that's probably what she is getting at, is like, I like just the simplicity of iMessage. I can send high quality pictures and videos. We have the FaceTime integration, and that's something that Apple got right very early. And now, of course, people are very hesitant to change from it because it's the default messaging app and it works. And when you text other iPhones, there's a lot of simple, easy to use features. And when you text other Androids, there isn't. And it's taken a long time for the competition to get together another standard, RCS, which is still kind of a mess, but slowly making its way onto iPhone. And a lot of people are just, I know what I'm comfortable with, and that's what I want to use, and I don't want to have to, because when they're using Android, it involves, oh, well, if you want to do that, you either have to SMS text, or we have to download Facebook Messenger and go through a different app, or use Instagram DMs, or use Snapchat, and just confuse people further. Or there's been app optimization problems with Android, so that built up a negative stereotype. Even if it's a lot better now than it used to be, it's very hard to shake that stereotype from people. So if they have this negative association with Android camera quality, not because of the cameras, but because of the third-party app optimizations, that stigma sticks with it over time, because most people are not smartphone reviewers that are going out and checking out new smartphones, and most people don't want to have to relearn the way they use their phone and have new passwords and new account management. They just want it to work, and iPhones are known for being pretty simple like that. Um, I don't date women with iPhones. I can't convert them if they're already in the garden. You know what I mean? Oh my God, Mark. Women under 34 will not date you without an iPhone, generally, in the USA. Eh, I think people are, ironically, the women you're describing are very narrow minded, and you're also being very narrow minded with that viewpoint. I'm sorry. I just, from my own anecdotal evidence, I know lots of people that have dated and then got married with, Android owners. I could think of at least 3 people in my personal life that have Android phones that still somehow were able to find a woman and date them and get married. It's like, you're being narrow-minded by saying that women will all think that way. And yes, the women that do think that way are narrow-minded, but I don't think it's the majority. I think it's a small group of narrow-minded ladies that are being very picky. Um, I agree with Katrina. Most women don't care what phone you own. I agree. There's a lot of things they're looking for in a guy. I don't think that's high on the list. If you go to most, I don't know, dating sites are like, what are you looking for in a man? iOS. I refuse to believe that's what most of them are saying. I'm sorry. I commend iPhone for its stability and optimization. It's doing a great job. Yeah, it's just a lot of people, both men and women, don't want to fuss around with setting up new phones or learning new things or getting new accounts. So if they grew up with an iPhone, they're probably just going to want to keep using an iPhone because that's what they're comfortable with. It's the same thing with a lot of people in cars. A lot of people just buy Toyotas. They're going to keep driving Toyotas. Um, a lot of people buy Subarus, and they will continue to buy Subarus no matter what. That's my brand. That's what I'm comfortable with. That's what I'm used to. It's the same thing with phones. Narrow-minded people are attached to each other. What? My mom spent 6 years trying to convert her ex to iPhone from Android because he was constantly complaining about his S22 Ultra being a piece of crap. They broke up. Many other reasons, though, of course. No, I think that was the only reason. Purely broke up because they didn't want to switch. I think that Apple is growing because everything is just extremely convenient within the bubble of iOS, and I think it is seen as a status symbol in more developing countries. Eh, I think status symbols only get you so far. I mean, it doesn't work that way with clothes, right? Like there are some status, name brand shoes and status symbol clothes out there, but they aren't the best sellers. The luxury brands that make the fancier clothes or whatever. They don't outsell the cheap clothes that everyone can get at a thrift store that most people wear across the world. So when you talk about market share on the number of billions, I'm sure status symbol has a certain impact, but I don't think that's most of it. I think that's, there's probably a ton of variables that go into it. But that's why it's an interesting topic for me. It's like, what's causing it? But yeah, there's a lot of convenience and there's a lot of simplicity with switching and with using other devices and with the App Store being so optimized and clean and easy to understand. Let's not forget the real villain in the room. Walmart in the US at least doesn't accept any kind of Apple or Samsung Pay. Well, that's on purpose. They totally could. They choose not to because they lose like a percent of a percent if they use Apple Pay, but if you use Walmart Pay, they get to keep all their money. To say that Apple is known for that is now the matter of past. Samsung is also second to none when it comes down to treating their own users. It's a very well integrated system. I mean, if you're a techie person, which I know you are because you're watching this, you're more aware of that. Like I know after reviewing Androids that they can still have great cameras, great displays, great prices, honestly, and they're just overall great phones. But is everyday person going to go out and watch tech reviewers review Samsung phones? No, they know what they know and they're going to stick to what they're familiar with. Um, I'm from Pakistan and the iPhone is a status symbol. It's not just like that in the USA. Oh, I'm sure, but again, I'm talking about the world. I'm not just talking about one country in particular. USA, even population-wise, is not even a tenth of the world. Um, I think Apple just nails the little things. They understand people better than other companies. Just watch an Apple event right after watching a Samsung keynote. Yeah, that's very well said. Everything Apple, bro. They do understand how to market. They do understand how to. You're right. Get just little details, animations, graphic design, simplicity of navigating UI and menus, and they don't try to change things too drastically. And they like there to be some consistency. Um, I don't know. I don't even. I struggle with the status symbol thing because there's Androids that cost more than iPhones. Galaxy Folds and S24 Ultra, I believe, starts higher than the iPhones do. So to me, it's more than just status because iPhones are not the most expensive phones. So there's something. It's a status of a different kind. But there's something associated with just iPhone being more luxurious, which I don't think is purely down to price. It also comes down to design. It's like the way it's designed is smarter or more comfortable or more convenient than any other phone. So that's why if it is a status symbol, it's not purely just from expense. There's more to it than that. Um, I hope you honor talking about the Dodge Daytona in the next TV podcast. That's going to be all on Mike. If Mike brings it up, maybe, but I'm not bringing it up. I don't think it's worth talking about. But for the same reason, that's why I don't like being a critical guy. Some people like the rant, but I can't make a living on rants. I'm sorry. Bert Jansen, 29 months of support. Holy cow! Thank you very much. Very kind of you. Um, while Samsung is hyping 200 megapixel, 1 1/3 inch sensor, 12 to 1 binning, etc., whereas Apple is busy telling you how the iPhone will save your life with crash detection. Oh yeah, that's pretty effective marketing. I will say though, I've seen a lot of comparisons of the S24 Ultra with their new anti-reflective coating. Wow, that looks marvelous. I hope that comes to an iPhone. It looks great. Not one country, talking about all developing countries like India, Pakistan, Bangladesh. Yeah, I mean, I could understand that being status symbols, but I don't know how much that sales really push it because of that. Like, I need to buy an iPhone so I come across as more successful. I don't know. I've been to developing nations. I don't see a lot of people thinking that way. Maybe some people do, but I don't think that's the only reason. And again, like I said, iPhones aren't the most expensive phones, so there's a reason that they have that positive association with them. I don't know. I hear about that in the comments, especially when Androids are talking about it. If Androids are talking about why iPhones are successful, they usually try to come up with, oh, well, it's not about the product actually being good. They don't like to acknowledge that. It's like, well, I'll come up with any way to justify its growth without acknowledging that it might do something better. So they usually come down to, oh, well, people buy them as status symbols. I go there. I don't see people using that argument. Oh my God. That guy has an iPhone. I know because I've been to developing nations with an iPhone. People don't look at me because of that. They look at me because I have red hair. um, Still upset that they still buy the inferior iPhone 14 out of all the better options. Yeah, I don't understand why the iPhone 14 sells well. I refuse to believe it's because of some feature it has over the iPhone 13. I think it's because people don't want to, they want an iPhone. They get that far, but they don't want to, cross shop or figure out which one has the features they want. They just, well, that's the newer one, so I'll buy that one. iPhone has been and always been expensive from other countries since the beginning, while Android phones are known to be cheaper in those countries as well to get more sales. Perception right there. Sure, it's perception, but I'm just saying iPhones tend to be more expensive, but they are not the most expensive. Like the Z Fold, I don't think would carry the same status symbol, even though it's more expensive than an iPhone. It was only imported with heavily taxes. Now with base iPhones are being assembled in India, the prices have dropped and more accessible. So why is it so status symbol if its price has dropped so much? I agree about the anti-reflectivity, although just a tip, if you can stomach screen protectors, you get almost the same result with a FlowLab Nano Armor 3D. The anti-reflectivity is insane. Sorry, I can't stomach screen protectors. I just really don't like them. Even though my phone has gotten scratched up because of it, I still really like the way my phone feels without a screen protector. Dylan says, I see a lot more 14 pluses than I wish I did. That makes sense. The rest of the devices are not cheap, but they work so well together on a level that I haven't seen on any other brand. They have all the options, but they don't work as well together. That's true. You want to come to iPhone? Yeah, you know how many years that will take, right? No, I don't. One, you buy it, and then you have it. Status symbol is now my Vision Pro's job. The shroud of the smart. I hate how many people have taken videos and people think it's real of people like walking around with Apple Vision Pro on. I'm like, they're not using it. Like, that's not spatial computing. They're just using the pass-through, which is just a fuzzier, worse way to look at the real world. There's all these videos of people with Apple Vision Pro walking around doing this. I'm like, you can't pin the windows to move with you. That doesn't work. It only works when you're sitting and you put the windows around you. But if you walk right through the windows. The windows won't move with you. So whenever I see those stupid videos of people walking around or doing things with Apple Vision Pro, I'm like, that's just the dumbest. It's the dumbest way to use it. It'd be like, I don't know. It's the equivalent of like holding the iPhone backwards. It's like, look at people on their phones all the time. It's like you're just doing this or something. I don't know. It'd be like wearing wired headphones that aren't plugged into anything. It's like you're just, yeah, that's a status symbol. That'll die off. That won't last too long. Last week, a big YouTuber made a video comparing Apple products to Samsung products. She admitted the Samsung products being better, but just kept preferring Apple just because she wants to fit in. Again, my sister's a great example. I mean, she had an Android when she moved here and did not want an iPhone, but you know, her old it was a Xiaomi phone, didn't work here. So I was like, you just sorry, but I'll switch you to an old iPhone I have. We had an old iPhone lying around, so I switched her to an iPhone, and it did not result in some kind of social association. I really don't think. I mean, people say that, but I don't think that's most people. I don't think they buy the iPhone just so they can fit in. And even if they do, there was some way the iPhone earned that street cred. I don't think people just flock to brands for no reason. They flock to brands, you know. There's brand power, but brand power has to be earned. You can't just get a brand power from nothing. Do you think it will be an Apple March event? Rumors are saying no. I think we're just getting site refreshes near the end of the month, according to Mark Gurman. Do you think the pass-through on Vision Pro could be enhanced with software updates, or is it purely going to be I think it's more of a hardware limitation. I don't think there's much the software can do. Tesla was able to improve their video on old models, not to the newest hardware with over-the-air update. I found a more efficient way to compress the data or something like that. They mainly just color corrected it and it increased the sharpness. I had the Tesla before that hardware 3 update and after, and it was noticeably better, but it was mainly because the video was not color corrected before that update, whereas Apple put a ton of time and attention into the color correction and the frame rates and stuff before the launch, whereas for Tesla, it was more of an afterthought. It was like, oh yeah, we have these cameras. I guess we should probably update the color so it looks a bit more lifelike. My friends have Samsung Ultras and they tried the AirDrop equivalent feature and we found out that it works, but it's janky and takes effort to get to it. The speed is fine, but you feel repelled too. Yeah, I really think animations come down more than people realize. There's something about the feel that people keep describing. I keep coming back to the way iOS and the way macOS feels. Something about it just feels more natural, more fluid, more convenient, even though, yes, there's still the same exact features available on Android, but they all feel more, like you said, you feel repelled trying to use it. It doesn't feel as clean. It doesn't feel as fluid. Everything feels a little bit more jank. Yeah, like Adith is saying, animation physics play a big role in how natural it looks. I think that matters more than people realize. It doesn't sound that big a deal. If we're just talking on a technical level, like, yeah, it's not that impressive that, okay, the iOS animation looks like this and the Android animation looks like this. They're both honestly very similar to each other. Last time I used a Pixel, it was like, yeah, I mean, I can get used to this. It's fine. But is it better? The way I described it, that I'm not sure is true, but I'm gonna say it's true, is it often feels like Apple has a team of therapists and uh, philosophers that look at icons and look at color combinations and look at graphic design, and they figure out exactly what brings the most amount of dopamine to the human brain. They figure out how to replicate it the best they can. Like, okay, what results in the most positive reaction, the most positive response to this arrow or to this color or to this arrangement of apps? And they figure out what results. They have all this research being done on the mental effects of being shown all these images. This one resulted in the most positive reaction. This animation resulted in the most happy response, and then they implement those. And most companies probably just do that. Bro's describing the human interface team. Exactly. Yes. Thank you. The human interface is just like, how do we make this the most addictive, most human-like experience possible? I feel better using an iPhone. There's something weird about that that's trippy when it starts to, and that's what Steve Jobs talked a lot about too when introducing the iPhone. It knows you. It's not meant to be a product you use. It's meant to be an extension of you. He talks like that about the original. It was like it's a reflection of yourself, to the point that that's why we get so defensive about it. Like someone else picks up your phone and starts using it, you very quickly are like, okay, give that back. Um, and there's this weird sensation, especially if you've used an Android phone for a while, and then you go back to an iPhone. There's this sense of fresh air. It's like you suddenly feel like you can breathe again. It's a creepy thing. It's very disturbing how they kind of know how we feel, how we look at things. And it's very hard to replicate, which is often why a lot of Chinese smartphone companies like this one basically just emulate the iOS experience the very best they can. There's a bunch of features on Android where they just straight up say, well, just rip that from iOS. Just do the exact same thing. Like Control Center, they put it in the top right corner. The multitasking, just the gesture control. There's so many things where they're like, well, Apple figured out that people like that, so we should probably just do what Apple did because that seems to work. Hey Bale says, as someone who generally dislikes Apple products, I will acknowledge that they are nice to use. Why I still don't like them is because of locking down the hardware through software, like no side loading. Well, I've got good news if you live in the European Union, because that's becoming possible slowly. I think you or everyone should watch Design Fluid Interface from Apple. Lots of things can be learned from there on how Apple builds things. Yeah, I think I have seen that, and that is an interesting dissection of UI design. What if Johnny Ive designed the Apple Vision Pro? Probably be thinner, probably be lighter, but probably be worse somehow. I don't know. Resolution would be worse. Battery life might be worse. I don't know what he would do. You can look at 60 hertz and instantly notice it's right there. Maybe people have bad eyes. I know people that genuinely don't notice. I've tried to show them. I don't think they're faking it. And I don't think there's something wrong with their eyes. I think it's genuinely just too small a difference for some people to pick up on or at least care about. I did. My cousin, who's my age, he's not some older guy or something. My cousin had a 12 Pro or something, and I had a 13 Pro. And he said, well, what did they change on that? And I said, well, the big thing was the ProMotion display, so the refresh rate's a lot smoother. And I showed it to him, and he has a 12 Pro. He's used a 12 Pro for like over a year at that point. And I compare them, and he was like, what? I said, don't you see how it's like, there's more frames between the animations? And he was like, what? What are you talking about? He genuinely could not see it. I don't think he was faking, and I don't think he has bad eyesight. I have worse eyesight than him. I probably need glasses, and he doesn't. But there's genuinely people that do not notice. Mark Sequin says, physics, fluidity, and Vision Pro is awesome. Everything is weightless but has mass to it. Still hard to explain, but very satisfying. Tossing the windows around, for example, glide away from you. I do think that's a distinct advantage Apple Vision Pro has. It's that Apple designed UI that makes everything feel so lifelike. It's part of the reason I think it makes so much sense for Apple to go into the spatial computing space, because the things we're all talking about, that fluidity and that um, simplicity of their software design, gives them, I think, a distinct advantage over uh, anyone else that makes a mixed reality headset. And while the hardware was very impressive, it's kind of the whole iOS Android topic all over again. The Android has a better this, the Android has a better this. When I used the Quest 3, the hardware was genuinely impressive, but the software definitely felt like I was using a magical floating Android tablet. But that includes all of the bad parts of Android tablets. It's just everything feels a little bit more clunky, a little bit less intuitive, a little bit more clunk, click, click. But Apple has all of these hardware limitations with the external battery and the additional weight, and of course, it's 7 times the price. Did I ever try to imitate your setup? I showed you of a phone and Mac having an exact same home screens, just the dock. No, I really wanted to, but I never got around to it. I've just been too dang busy, dude. I haven't changed my wallpaper in probably years at this point. Um, I'm actually daily driving both a 60 hertz iPhone and a 120 hertz Android. Android felt smooth and fast, but iPhone is also really good even at 60 hertz. Yeah, I know what you mean. There's something about that animation, that human interface team. Tor Aspen says, when do I think a new Apple TV will come, and do you think they'll change it like a screen or other thing? Who's to say? They've been talking about doing a dedicated television since as long as I've followed Apple, and they've never done it. So I'm convinced if they wanted to do one, they would have done it by now. I want them to do one. I think it would be better than everybody else's, but they kind of refreshed it with the, what was it, the A15 chip a lot sooner than I expected, just so they could get that stupid Apple Music Sing feature. Um, but an A15 chip in an Apple TV already feels really overkill for me. But it is cheaper, and the Siri remote's Type C, which is the best thing about it. But yeah, I don't know why they would update it. The only thing I could see them doing is if they kind of combined the HomePod and the Apple TV into just like a big sound bar that you could control like a HomePod, but it also hooks up to your TV and is a great sound system. And it could have a little center stage camera for FaceTime calls and stuff. We've talked about that for years, and it's never gone anywhere. So I want it to exist, but it doesn't. In my case, once I went to 120 hertz, I could never go back. I was going to get iPhone 14, and there was no way that was going to work because I also have iPad Pro and MacBook Pro. It's possible. I did it. I used a 13 Pro Max for over a year, and then I switched to an iPhone 10. It takes a lot of therapy, and it's a little hard on the eyes, but it is possible. It helped a lot because I was trying to use my smartphone less. I felt addicted to my smartphone. I still feel addicted, by the way. And I was using it so much that I was like, I kind of am okay downgrading because, for one, I miss the smaller phones, and the iPhone 10 was really comfortable to hold. Also, my mom wanted my 13 Pro Max, and she kept asking when she could have it. So I finally was like, okay, let's just switch, because also that gives me something to talk about, and the news wasn't that exciting at the time anyway. So I switched to the iPhone 10, and of course the battery life was worse and the refresh rate was worse, but that helped me use it less. But honestly, I still probably used it a lot. And now it's come full circle because I'm back on a 15 Pro, and I'm still very addicted to it. And it hasn't helped that Twitter has started paying me now, so now I feel even more motivated to use my phone, because it's like, well, I'm literally getting paid to just send tweets now. So that definitely didn't help with the smartphone addiction. The studio display is a prime example of why you actually don't want a literal Apple TV. Even if it was expensive, I think it'd be cool. Just like, I mean, Apple makes all kinds of expensive products that I would never buy. They made a $50,000 Mac Pro. I would have said that's ridiculous, but they did it. So what's so crazy about Apple making like a $6,000 or $8,000 OLED TV? That's really cool. You should share your ad. It's not much. It's like a couple $100 a month. It's not like, life-changing revenue, but it's more than nothing, which is what I would get on any other social media platform. Would I ever switch to the S24 Ultra? I was given a free one. That's the price. I don't think it would be worth buying one, but I've said on the record, I think if Google added me back to Team Pixel, I think that's the only way I would consider. The main reason being because the only way I have been community noted, yes. I thought that would affect my ad revenue more, but it wasn't it wasn't that much. Uh, what was I gonna say? Oh, if Google added me to Team Pixel, that's the only way I could justify switching because I could then keep my iPhone. If I'm gonna be buying the Android phone itself, then it turns into this weird like, okay, well, now should I sell the iPhone off or should I just have both? And I'm kind of a more minimalistic guy, so I don't want to have, I don't want to buy two flagships really if I don't need to. But if a company is like actively saying, we want you to review this, we want you to document their experience, I don't want them to pay me. But if they sent me the phone, then I would be more open to it. I don't think I'm getting back on Team Pixel either, but that's my price. When people say, would you review an S24? I don't know. If Samsung wanted me to, sure. Or nothing. Nothing has sent phones to people, and I've reached out to them, but they've never reached back out. I think the iPhone 11 should be fine for the next 3 years. Yeah, probably. iPhone 11 is a good phone. Can you go back to an iPhone 11 in 2024? Well, I was using an iPhone 11 before I got my 15 Pro, so yeah, that was just a couple months ago. Apple Watch Ultra 2 battery. Is it me or is it draining faster? Well, every time you use it, it cycles it, so it deteriorates a bit more. So that makes sense. Um, what did you think about Mkbhd single-handedly ruining Fisker Ocean? Oh no, I don't. I don't think he single-handedly ruined them. He probably weakened the demand for them, but the demand for them was not that high anyway. Fisker Ocean ruined Fisker Ocean by designing a car that couldn't be scaled profitably. That's their fault. That's not Marquez's fault. It's like trying to think of a good example that's not dark humor. Um, that's like blaming the firefighters for not getting to the house that burned down because of the stove being left on. It's like, I mean, the firefighters could have come earlier, but they're not the ones who start the fire, right? I got kicked out of Team Pixel years ago. I want to say that was 5 years ago now. That was a long time ago. Probably because they sent me a phone and I didn't like it. So I reviewed it and said, this isn't a very good phone. So then they stopped sending me phones. But I've always said, like, you can send me stuff, but I'll never sign a contract. The one thing I won't agree to is a script or any affiliate deal, like where they pay me. Um, and I won't do sponsorships, but if they want to send me the phone, that's great, cool. I'll be more inclined to review it if the company's willing to pay for the phone. But that doesn't mean I'm going to like it. That doesn't mean I'm going to give it a positive endorsement just because they paid for it. Same thing with this Doogie phone. The only reason I have this is because it was a gift. It was just sent to me by the company. And what's funny is even after I reviewed it and said, I mean, it's kind of interesting and weird, but would I buy it? No. Should you buy it? No, not really. I didn't really recommend it, but the company kept sending me. They wanted to send me more of those phones, and I was like, they're all kind of the same. So I said no thanks. But they make tablets too. They want me to review the tablets, and I'm just like, I don't care. My M1 MacBook still feels brand new. I've never had this experience with it. Yeah, that's what Mike's been saying about his M1 Air as well. Will you keep Lightning remote even if wife switches to SE4? Probably, just because I think I've charged my Apple TV remote twice in the past year, so it's kind of hard to justify replacing the whole remote over that. But I don't know. I don't think I would buy a brand new USB-C remote either. If I really got annoyed with it just being the last light, even if my wife switches to the SE4, she still has an iPad Pro that's Lightning, so there's lightning cables around. I'm not going to get rid of every lightning cable in the house overnight, so I'll just slowly wait for everything to die. I should get the tablet. I don't know. You should see these tablets. I don't even want an Apple-made tablet. Why would I just don't like collecting things. As someone who has moved several times and lives in a, relatively small house, I don't like collecting a bunch of stuff. I love getting rid of things. I love selling things. I can't believe I spent like 72 hours in constant anticipation for the new iPads, only for them to not drop it. I know, I was surprised by that too. I thought We got a MacBook Air last week. This would be the iPad week, but no, that's not it. Yeah, $59 just to get USB-C. I wouldn't buy one new. I would probably just find one on eBay or Facebook Marketplace, and you're not going to move anymore, right? Yeah, I don't know. I don't plan that far out. There's a chance I could move again. Um, we've talked about it. The market's not really good right now with the interest rates the way they are, but um, we might move another time. I might want to move somewhere where I can get fiber internet because I'm getting pretty sick of all of the either Starlink or T-Mobile home internet or Verizon home internet. I'm after a while I kind of get sick, and I can't get fiber internet where I live, but there's some places not too far from here I could move to that would have it, and that would be pretty tempting. And just, a bigger house that would be better at hosting people, or you know if I have a family someday, that kind of thing. You want to have some more space. This is a good starter home for us. It's been good, but um, I don't know if it's our forever home. But still, even if I wasn't moving, I like not having too many things. It gets overwhelming and it gets annoying, especially when you do cleaning, and you want to make room for the stuff in your life that you do care about, that you do value. Unburden yourself. Amen on the fiber internet. Yeah, that's slowly becoming like mandatory on my next house. Have I considered AT&T fiber? It's not an option here. Trust me, I've tried. They'll often cover the installation fees in certain areas. Yeah, in certain areas, not this one. No, I've checked. Trust me, I've checked with everybody who offers fiber, and that they will not route a cable out here. It's not a thing. Um, Way more than enough to receive phones to address. The subscribers don't mean much. If Aptera never goes into production and you needed a second car, would you reserve an R3 or a Model Y? It's a very specific situation. I don't know why we would need a second car. We already have two cars. Um, I don't know. I guess it would depend on the pricing. We don't know the pricing of the R3, and I don't know what the used market on Model Ys will look like. As long as Tesla has a referral program and Rivian doesn't, I'm heavily financially incentivized to keep buying Teslas. They really got me there. I'm sorry. I know it sounds biased, and it honestly is very biased and skewed, but it's like, if I have to pay for electricity or not pay for electricity, which car do you think I'm going to buy? Electricity is getting more and more expensive, especially where I live. So to charge up an R3 and drive it around every month, as long as the referral program situation doesn't change, it's going to be like $100 a month more to own that than it would a Tesla. And I love the R3. But if Tesla gets rid of the free supercharging and Tesla, reworks the referral program so that I can't charge it for free, then I'd be a lot more open to buying non-Teslas, because then it's like, okay, I'm paying for electricity no matter what. So we'll see how the actual efficiency of the R3 is when it comes out. I really like the R3. I would really like to own one, but it's just the numbers got to make sense, because I already have spent a lot of money on my EV, and it's a great car. We drove it a lot yesterday, honestly. I spent so much time in the car yesterday. I edited like 2 videos and uploaded one, and we hung out at the charger before we went to dinner with our friends. And man, it's a great vehicle. There's honestly nothing wrong with it, and because I work from home, there's very little reason for us to buy another car. Uh, but yeah, we'll see. We'll cross that bridge when we get there. But the referral program has got to change in some way for Rivian and Tesla. For Rivian, it would have to exist, and then an adventure network would have to be installed closer to me, or Tesla would have to scrap the free charging, which is a possibility. Which legacy manufacturers make the best EVs? There's some decent ones around. I'm tempted to say Ford just because they have supercharger access now, but soon everybody will. Um, I don't know. I like different things about each of them. Hyundai and Kia are coming out with some pretty great stuff, but they all have the same software issue, which is they all have dated software. It all comes back to this whole iOS fluidity and the human interface team that's Apple really gets right, and I think Tesla and Rivian also replicate, and Aptera. This is actually, spoiler alert, this is what today's EV video is about. It's about what legacy automakers get wrong versus what EV startups get right, and it always comes back to the software. And all of the legacy automakers have pretty clunky software, so a lot of the time they fall back on Apple and Google to do the heavy lifting, and that's a good idea, but it's not as good as just having a well done OS from the ground up. Uh, Everything Apple Bro says, I'm a bit confused about your overall view on Vision Pro. I just missed it, but did you ever give your definitive opinion? No, in the review, I explicitly stated I'm not keeping it, and it doesn't have to do with the price. It has to do with the product. I mean, sure, the price doesn't help. It's very expensive, and it'd be hard to justify a $3,500 expense. But my point, after using it for a couple weeks, was even if this thing was $1,000, it would probably collect dust in my office. And as someone who doesn't like holding on to tech that's not useful, I only want to own what I need as a minimalist, and or as Randy calls me, an essentialist. That's why I got rid of my Apple Watch. It wasn't because I needed money. It was like $200. It's like that's not going to make or break anything. I sold it because I wasn't getting much use out of it, and I realized I appreciated traveling lighter. It was a cool piece of hardware, but I was quickly running out of use cases for it. It wasn't a comfort issue. It wasn't like, oh, I can't wear this for hours at a time because it's too uncomfortable. It was like, no, I just run out of things to do with it because the app market's not too great, and it's not as convenient as just pulling out a phone. It's a lot more isolating when you're around other people, and I am around other people a lot, and it makes other people feel weird and uncomfortable when they can't see exactly what you're doing, and you're just like, you know, makes you like the crazy guy in the room. So I don't spend a lot of time alone. The best use cases for Apple Vision Pro, Burkhart on his Twitter page wrote a good article about it. He was like, here are the strengths, and I think the three strengths were like watching movies and TV shows, using the Mac as an external monitor. There was something else. I'm blanking on the third thing. But the problem with using it as an external monitor with the Mac is it's much more expensive than an actual external monitor. And it's not as portable as I thought it would be. It was getting tiring packing it around. I tried to use it on the go. I took a trip like immediately after getting it, so I was traveling with it, and I did not find it that easy to travel with because of the girth, because of how tall it is, and it was another thing to keep track of, and there was too many steps. With an external monitor, I just plug it into my Mac and boom, I have a big screen monitor. With Apple Vision Pro, it's like, okay, unlock my Mac, put on the Vision Pro, unlock the Vision Pro, connect by looking over the connect tile, which doesn't always appear, and then all the windows have to resize and stuff. There's just way too many additional steps and it, like Zolotech said, it doesn't look as good. It's not as good a refresh rate as a real external monitor, and it's not as rich of a display because you're looking at it through lenses and goggles and stuff. It's not the same experience as using an actual external monitor, which is cheaper, and even as an external monitor on the go, it's kind of a pain in the butt to travel around with, and it's so expensive and so fragile that I'm going to feel dangerous carrying it around with me. FaceTime was the third thing. Oh, that's why I forgot, because I don't know if I agreed with that. I tried FaceTiming people on it, and I thought it was just creepy and weird. I wouldn't FaceTime anybody that I genuinely wanted to talk to while wearing it. I would pretty much only FaceTime people as a joke or to show that it's possible. But for actual FaceTime calls, I'm usually not by myself. I'm usually with my wife or my sister or a friend or something, and we're calling someone else. It's rarely just me by myself. So for my lifestyle, even if it was $1,000, I would have returned it. I'm not an essentialist, so I think it'd be more prone to seeing it as John does, but that's still great to know. I didn't watch his review, but I still am excited for the future. I'm excited for Vision OS devices. I think there's a lot of room for improvement, and because it's so flawed is what makes it so exciting. FaceTime is cool when it's all other techies who are also using Vision Pro, but for the average call, I agree. Yeah, okay, I think we agree there. For most people, I don't think it'd be a very good use case. But if I'm watching movies and TV shows, I'm watching it with another person. I wouldn't want to wear the headset because then I'm the only one who can watch it. Do you think Marquez was wrong to borrow a car to review from a dealer? He didn't get it from Fisker, and the dealer got harsh press out of it and no sale. I don't know, personally. I think he's welcome to do that. Marquez reviewed the product in its current form. People should know. People are going to watch YouTube videos on products before they buy the product. So if the product's not good, I don't think Marquez did anything wrong, personally. I don't agree with everything Marquez does. I thought the title was a little harsh because if you actually watch the review, he's somewhat positive about it. But I think the Fisker Ocean probably resulted in weak sales because the product wasn't very good. Marquez just showed that it wasn't very good. That's not his fault. What did he do wrong? I don't get it. Uh, do you ever consider doing a collab with another Apple sheep in YouTube like Zolotech? But that's funny. Several people have asked me to collab with him, and he seems like a nice guy, but I don't think people understand what collabs are or what they should be. Like, what does that mean? We just talk? Because I don't think he watches my videos and I don't watch his videos. So it's like, you guys should just get in a room together. It's like, and do what? What do you want us to do? Just ask each other questions, I guess? I don't know. I've done pretty big collabs in the past, and they never really perform all that great, and they're not as interesting as people think they would be. What do you mean you don't agree with everything Mkbhd does besides sort of clickbaiting the title? Anything else? No, he shares opinions sometimes that I don't agree with, or he makes predictions that I don't agree with. Um, that's his choice. It's his channel. He can do what he wants. Um, he also thought that Apple wouldn't switch the iPhone to USB-C. I remember watching his video on it, and he said they'll probably go portless before the European Union mandates USB-C. And I said, Marquez, you're not reading the law correctly, because the law says if the device is large enough to accommodate for Type-C, it has to. So I was like, you're missing the point. Um, so just disagree on certain things, but I'm just saying in that specific instance of the Fisker Ocean, I don't think he did anything wrong. But would you ever go super out of your comfort zone and get a phone that uses Linux OS? Not unless I had a legitimate reason to. If I have a good reason to, maybe, but I don't think I do. It's kind of slimy to borrow a car, review it, and get monetization out of it, return it, and the dealer got nothing from it aside from the bad press linked to the video. The dealer didn't have to agree to it. The dealer does. I mean, it's the dealer's choice to let people go out and review the car. I've done that. I don't think there's anything wrong with that, especially if it's not selling. Fisker Oceans weren't selling. I think that was the bigger problem. So, are you trying to say that the dealer should have tricked people into not knowing how bad the product was so that they would buy it and then go, "Oh crap, wait, this is a bad product." No, I'm sorry. I'm not gonna side with the dealer. Dealer's just trying to flip a car, which I honestly have bigger ethical questions with. Marquez is trying to show people how a car is before they buy it, which is a necessary, crucial part of a buying decision. I've never even heard of the light phone. Yeah, I have heard of that. No, I don't. I don't think that would be a good phone for me. I don't see the point in one of those like, oh, it's the bare bones. It doesn't do anything fancy. It's like, okay, well, if it doesn't do anything particularly well, then I'm not going to use it. The light phone is basically good at calling, and that's like the last thing I do on my phone is making calls. Um, you definitely don't need to own the product to review it, especially if it's a bad product. That's all the more reason to just borrow it for a day and then give it back. Um, what is it? I mean, the dealer's job is to buy cars that he think people would want and then sell those at a profit, in which case I think it's kind of a weird business model that's kind of dated in the internet age anyway. I think what makes more sense is for the manufacturer to make a product and sell it to the consumer, not make a product, have a dealer buy it, and then the middleman, the dealer, sell it for a profit. This is like, imagine if a phone reseller, like I don't know, a phone stand at a mall, bought an Escobar phone, and then Marquez went to the shop and said, "Hey, can I see that real quick?" Oh wow, this Escobar phone sucks, and gave it back. And now, okay, well, Marquez made a video about why the Escobar phone sucks. Therefore, that phone reseller isn't going to sell the Escobar phone. It's like, yeah, because the product sucks. Marquez is just showing when a product is not worth it, which I think is totally acceptable. If the product's bad, the product's bad. The reviewer, unless they're lying about it or being deceitful about it, which I don't think Marquez was. He was showcasing his experience. The title was not very representative of the product, in my opinion. He said, "This is like the worst car I've ever reviewed," but then half of the video was compliments. But if you watch the video, you'd know that. If you're not actually in the market for the car, then you'll read the title and say, "Wow, look, he bashed the Fisker Ocean. It won't sell now." It's like, yeah, but if you really wanted one, you were going to buy one anyway. And the review was pretty fair, in my opinion, aside from the title. It was critical of the software, which is a problem. And then Fisker, I think it's really shady when a company specifically tells people not to review a product. I thought that was shady. I didn't think what Marquez did was shady. If a company says, no, don't review that, why? That's his job. You're saying if you don't think people should review something, then you shouldn't be selling it. Clip that. Capture that. If you're against a reviewer reviewing a product, don't sell the product. If you're willing to sell it to an everyday person or an average consumer, then you open the gates to public criticism, reviewers checking it out and saying whether or not they think it's worth it. The bigger problem with Fisker is they can't sell vehicles profitably. Their problem is not Marquez. Love the guy, but holy crap, I couldn't believe he ever said that when it was so obvious. I mean, I thought the video itself was good. I just thought the title was... I don't even know if he made the title. Shady to hire some movie star to review a product for money. Yeah, that's kind of the inverse. It's far more like, let's just convince celebrities to endorse products that they don't actually believe in. That happens all the time, and we're just like, well, they need to make a buck. Marquez's strategy is far more ethical, in my opinion. It's like, let me just check out the product, and if it's bad, I'll say it's bad. Sometimes that's valuable insight. Oh, about the USB-C iPhone. Yeah, I remember that. He was like, no, they'll go portless. And I was like, My parents were craving sushi, and so they sent me on a mission to Whole Foods, and might as well felt like a mission to Mars, and I was able to patch them through FaceTime. They picked their sushi. Congrats. In the realm of tech, so do you have any advice for me? Talk about things you're interested in, because that'll help you last a lot longer. It's a very oversaturated market. It's very hard to get a tech channel off the ground these days when the tech is less interesting than it used to be, and there's so many tech channels now all talking about the same things. So your best bet is to talk about things that you find genuinely interesting, because if you do, then even if it doesn't turn into a job or an income source, at least you'll have fun along the way. Try to separate yourself in some way, shape, or form. There's not some textbook answer that's like, just listen to me and you'll have guaranteed success. There's no guarantees with YouTube. There's nothing is promised. I don't think if I started making tech videos today, I would be successful. I think that I got lucky being in the right place at the right time when there was less saturation with the Apple coverage content, and there was more demand for more Apple-focused channels, and there was more interesting stuff going on at the company. There was more things to talk about. Now there's less things to talk about, and there's way more channels. So there's less demand and more supply, which makes it very hard to get off the ground. So if you're focused on things that are genuinely interesting to you, then it'll be more enjoyable than if you're counting on, well, this will be fun if I get views and get paid from it, because I honestly don't know how likely that is anymore. I'm I've got a relatively big channel, and I'm still trying to figure out how to make this whole thing work. I'm still making this up as I go. A lot of big creators seemingly didn't read the common charger law from the EU. It was frustrating when so many are talking about portless. I appreciate you separating the signal from the noise. Thanks, Mike. When it comes to games and movies, if the review embargo is on the day of release or after, that's usually a red flag. Well, Apple does that too, but you can tell that when there's an embargo signed, they don't say whatever they want to say. Um, they don't have complete control over their opinion, which is why I don't do those things. Um, I like being able to say, if I really like something, I'll say it. But if I really don't like something, I also want the option to say it. I can't believe the artwork hasn't updated on Apple Podcast. I've been emailing Apple. I contacted Spreaker, our podcast hosting service, and I said, why won't the artwork update on Apple? It updated on everything else. It updated for Google Podcasts. It updated for Spotify, but it wouldn't update for Apple. And I contacted Spreaker, and they said, there's nothing we can do about it. That's all on Apple. So I contacted Apple, and Apple said, we'll refresh them internally. And they refreshed the wrong ones, I guess. The normal Tailosive Tech and EV audio forms, like I take my YouTube videos that I upload and just convert them into podcasts. Those updated, but the actual, hour-long Tailosive Tech and EV podcast, they wouldn't update. And I was like, no, you refreshed the wrong ones. Like, I want to refresh all 6 of these. And I sent them, like, here's the Tailosive Tech streams. Here's the Tailosive EV streams. Here's the Tailosive Tech podcast, Tailosive Tech, just regular. And they're being so slow about it. And they said, okay, maybe it'll refresh if you delete the app, unfollow the show, and then re-download the app and follow the shows again. And I was like, why is this not a problem on Spotify? It updated on Spotify like that, like instantly, with the same hosting service. So I know it's not Spreaker's fault. I know it's on Apple. And I've been emailing them back and forth. Usually they send me an email and say, okay, I looked at the normal episodes where it's just 5 to 6 minutes because it's just the YouTube videos in audio form, and those refreshed. So the person said, hey, look, they're already updated, you're welcome, problem solved. And I said, no, you got to refresh all of them, not just those 2. And I respond within 5 minutes of them emailing me, and then I don't hear back from them for like a day. So they take forever to get back to me, and I have no clue what their problem is. I don't know why it's so hard for them to update artwork, because no one else is having that issue. I've done everything right on my end, and for some reason, why are you not interested in covering crypto, even though it's still tech? Because it's just a big, giant scam. What else is there to talk about with crypto? Guys, the value's up today. People aren't buying crypto because they think it's the future of currency. They're buying it to make a buck because it's unregulated and it doesn't close like the stock market closes. I'm very close to cashing out all my crypto because it seems to be at an all-time high at the moment. So I'm kind of like, yeah, I don't really believe in this, but people have sent me crypto in the past. I haven't bought any, but I'm just like, yeah, if you want to give me some imaginary currency, I guess I'll take it. But yes, I'm still on my OE tires. I got them rotated last week, and the guy said that they still look great. They still look fine. So that kind of helps when I'm featherfoot. Lawyers exist. My parents told me just to give up on YouTube as a creator. What is your motivation, and do you got any tips? It helps if you're interested in what you're talking about. I think that's what I just keep coming back to. You should definitely cash out all your crypto right now if you have some. Well, I did that before, and I would have had more money now if I didn't cash out early. So every day that it goes up, I'm grateful I haven't cashed out, but it should help me cover my losses on Canoe. Actually, I think it covers all of it. Yeah. So all of the money I'll make from crypto will cover all the losses from investing in Canoe, which was a big mistake. I'm waiting for Elon to make my $5 of Doge go to the moon. Yeah, I have some Dogecoin as well, but it was a gift. I would say have a backup plan. That's what I had. for YouTube. I didn't bet my whole life on it. Like, if this doesn't work out, I will have no job. I would say talk about things you're interested in, have a backup plan. I didn't just straight out of high school do YouTube full time. I worked a regular job that made, real money so that I could pay my bills, and I did YouTube on the side, and then I worked that regular job until YouTube was making enough for me to quit. So I wouldn't just, you know, live on unemployment or not make any money out of school. If YouTube should always be a side project first, and if it takes off, then great. But there's no guarantees, so don't count on it taking off, because there's no promises and no guarantees with YouTube careers. They can come and go. They can leave just as fast as they arrive. And if you talk about things you're interested in, then at least you'll be enjoying yourself along the way. Yeah, crypto is just a bunch of pump and dumps. That's why there's so many crypto scams. It's because it's unregulated. So it's much, much easier to scam people with crypto than anything else. Canoe is still, they're not dead yet, but they're a heavily depreciated electric vehicle company that Apple almost bought. And all the reports are saying that the Apple car internally looked a lot like the Canoe electric vehicle. Consistency is what matters when making YouTube content. It gives viewers confidence that you'll be around in the long term. Yeah, that's a good advice, Margel. Thanks for saying that. Yeah, if you're still in high school, then just keep your options open. Don't assume that you're definitely going to make it in YouTube and you don't have to prepare for any other jobs or careers. Anyway, seems like T-Mobile's freaking out, so now's a good time to wrap up the stream. But I appreciate you all for your support, your generosity. Thank you for tuning in, and I'll chat with you all more later. Have an excellent rest of your day. Bye-bye.